Hey everyone, this is your host Megan, and welcome to the very first episode of Wonder Water Insights. I want to share that my main focus in the future episodes will revolve around the fascinating world of water quality. However, today we are diving into a unique blend of topics including real estate, plumbing, and of course, water quality. So joining me today is Noel. He has experience in real estate and has a background of plumbing and mechanical engineering. And I thought it would be a great idea to learn the real estate side of things. So let's dive in.
Let's do it. Hi. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining on your birthday especially. So happy birthday.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So you want to introduce yourself and who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Noel Cahill. I am in the process of becoming a realtor, joining Keller Williams Legacies in Vaughan. So I have completed the course, and now I am just waiting for my RICO application to basically finalize, and then once that's done, I will be able to trade in real estate. Before that, I have a sales background, which is in the engineering and industrial sector. So what I have done for the past 2.5 years now is sell centrifugal pump gear, motors, basically anything that's needed to use a pump. And then even before that, I was in the plumbing industry for about 7 years, if I could ballpark it.
Wow. And you were just talking on your way in that this was your old school.
Yes, actually. So
this
when
building.
I think I was 19 or 20, I did my pre-apprenticeship here. So it was nuts. I get off the highway. I'm like, wait, this is where I went to school. And then it's now a plaza, which is unreal. Like this room right now could very well be where I learned how to solder or cut cast iron. So it's crazy being back here after almost like 10 years.
That's awesome. So I wanted to talk about how I came across your video on Facebook.
Okay.
Because you were talking about how you were in real estate and you were talking about plumbing.
Yeah.
And you were discussing about how ABS piping should not be in a commercial building due
Correct.
to fire-rated issues.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was really interesting because I think there needs to be a lot more education around plumbing and water quality in terms of like what a real estate or a home inspector can provide when it comes to that kind of education.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I thought that was a very interesting thing. I was curious, who's responsible for fixing the problems in a home, like the buyer, the seller? Like, do you know? We're good.
So when a buyer puts in an offer, it could be conditional upon an inspection. Now, the inspection the buyer would pay for, and pending on how that inspection turns out, the offer could go through. Now, the buyer could also put a waiver on that inspection clause. So meaning that even if they aren't happy with the inspection, they could waive that clause and they could go through with purchasing the home anyways. But at the end of the day, it's to their discretion. But in most cases, it will be the buyer paying for this inspection. It comes down to like how bad they want the home or not.
Right. And in the plumbing industry, I've seen a lot of bad plumbing. One time I have a job and I'm in the basement, okay? Yeah. And the whole sewer is blocked with sewage,
no.
Okay? So I'm snaking it out and I can't unclog the sewer.
Okay.
And then I had to do a camera location and unfortunately it was a dig.
Okay.
So what had happened was the homeowner obviously didn't get a permit for this. He did it himself. He built a shower in the basement, tiled and everything, on top of a building trap. So, so I found that was interesting because you're not supposed to do that. And it had broken, and all the pipe was kind of just broken inside of that pipe.
Okay.
And so now, what if they decided to sell the house, but that issue never happened yet?
it didn't happen.
Yeah, let's just say it didn't happen yet.
Right.
And they were to sell the house. Now, I guess you have to look up for permits and stuff like that to see, like, do you look at the history of the permits and all that?
Well, the thing is, if the seller had done this without ever even getting a permit or without even letting anybody know. Now that being said, a permit would be required depending on like the nature of the renovation, depending on like how big it is or not. But if they did it themselves, then the buyer would only really know if the seller or the selling agent has disclosed that to them. So yeah, like, depending on how long after the buyer acquires the property and this incident happening, the seller may not be held responsible.
The seller may not be held. Yeah. Interesting.
Because if this happens like maybe like 2 years after purchase,
right,
then it's hard to really do anything with the seller at that point, I believe.
Interesting. Is there like a year or 2 years before
what is in the contract that's offered?
Oh, okay.
So the buyer can say, hey, like this or that can be warranted up until like a certain point after purchase. But the problem with that is you got to be very specific. And if they don't know that this washroom was put in by the seller himself, then they might not ever include that in a clause.
There are some things that I feel should be implemented in terms of when either buying or selling a house. And one of those things is the water quality, right? So there are a wide variety of issues in the water quality industry. And there are a lot of contaminants that are getting into our waterways and stuff like that nowadays. And one of them is lead lines. And the thing is that these things are not being pushed in terms of replacing lead lines or testing for lead lines when it comes to buying or selling a house. Home inspectors they're not looking for lead lines. There's other metal alloys that are in the, you could have 1/2-inch copper coming in, or, other materials. But for the most part, yeah, like funny because you can't taste lead. You can't. Right. So the only factor to really doing that, to finding out whether or not you have a lead line, is either lead testing or looking to see the water meter. So basically when that pipe is sticking out of that floor, what is that material? And oftentimes I encourage people to just take some sandpaper and just rub the pipe, and if it shines silver, then you know that it's a lead line. Right. And I think that these things should be implemented into buying or selling, because like you guys have the first communication when it comes to the education for the buyer or the seller, and including the home inspection, right? Right. But and the reason why I think this is super important is because you see cases where people get lead poisoning. You do. It does happen, and because it's not being tested for, or it's not pushed to be tested, the data on that is very limited. But people have tested it and have found that there are guidelines that exceed the recommended thing that's put in place. So basically in Canada, it's 5 parts per billion of lead. Okay. That is allowed into your water supply. And like, do you know any type of agencies or any kind of other like real estates who are practicing the water quality innovation and just kind of like projects on that side? Do you know? So as far as agencies, I don't know of any off the top of my head, only because, I am a newer or a to-be agent, so I haven't had the experience with like seeking out third parties or even working with them for that matter. But I do know that as far as water quality goes, and stumbling upon poor water quality, it tends to happen a lot with like cottage properties, more so rural, and just properties that basically like run off of wells.
There does tend to be a lot of problems when it does come to wells, whether it is leakage into the well itself, and then that leakage somehow making its way back into the home. It could be that the piping that was used to get the water from the well to the home could be insufficient material, like lead, let's say. So I think it tends to happen more with those kinds of properties. But then those areas that were urbanized very early, and let's say, I'm not sure when lead was actually used, but like let's just say if it was like anywhere
1970s.
from in the 1970s, anything that was like built during that time would probably have lead. So if we were selling a residential property that was built during that time, it'd be good on us, show that, you know, we are performing our due diligence by getting this inspection done to seeing if there is actual lead inside of the building.
But unfortunately, the inspection is not required for lead.
Yeah, that is true.
Since the city of Hamilton puts orthophosphate in the water to coat the lining of the lead. So the residence doesn't get a high concentration. But if you look in areas where they lack the resources, that they lack the filtration system, those things can be very complex because, you know, let's just say a seller does sell their home and the new people move in and there is high levels of lead. It's like, well then, and it's not disclosed or anything. It's like, well, how can we go about really educating these homeowners, right? And even though it's not being pushed, I think it's, you know, it's quite a complex thing because, you know, I just wish that it'd be implemented more.
Right.
Right.
And I think another problem too is that like the lead may not necessarily be found like from the slab to the water meter. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, you know, it could be found inside of the walls or something like that. So when water testing is done, how do we locate this lead piping if it's not at the water meter?
How do we locate if it's
in the wall, I should say.
Typically, yeah, that's it. That's a good point. So they didn't stop using lead solder up until 1985. So they actually used to use that with their copper piping as well. Right. So that's also a complex thing. Yeah. It used to be 50% tin and 50% lead as well. So yeah, you're right. So the lack of data when it comes to where are these water lines, right? Because they're oftentimes hidden and they go to the curb stop and then we don't know what the city is supplying. Right. So yeah, depending on how well developed the city is will really depend on how many, you know, lead lines are getting replaced.
There is still solder out there that does contain like a fair bit of lead. Is that correct?
Yeah, so they usually use that for drainage purposes for copper because it heats it more. So there are, which is funny because I saw at Lowe's and Home Depot that they sell 50% tin and 50% lead solder. Right. And I'm just like, I wonder how many people would confuse that or not know that there is
quite a few. Yeah.
Here's a question for you. For well testing, what is the requirement? Like, have you ever looked into that? Like the requirements for testing for a well?
The only time I've looked into it was during like my studies, but upon selling a property that does have a well, you should get it tested, whether the buyer wants a seller to do it or the buyer is willing to do it themselves. It should get tested because if you don't and you purchase a property, it could be extremely costly to fix. And if you do end up wanting to live in this property, whether it be for like a good tenure of time or even just vacational purposes, to stay there and have a good source of drinking water, you're going to have to get that tested. But I do believe it is done by a third party. I would almost recommend anything be done by a third party unless like you have like the know-how and the knowledge to do it yourself. But yeah, I would definitely say get it tested no matter what, even if it was like, let's say just put in like a year ago.
And to add to that, you know, the very basic thing is that for a requirement for a well, oftentimes people test it for E. coli, chloroform, stuff like that.
Right.
or coliform, sorry. And the thing is that is a very basic test, and it's great to understand that part. But there are certainly the issues that I'm seeing within the water quality testing side of things is that we're not really asking the question of where is my water coming from? Are there any herbicides or pesticides being sprayed in the area? These things are not being questioned or tested. Oftentimes the problem of a well could be often overlooked, but that is also on like a very complex thing, even in the water quality industry and for water quality specialists, right? They oftentimes will test the water according to what the financial kind of situation that the homeowner's in, right? So unfortunately, it's oftentimes overlooked. And I actually just saw I should have printed it off with me, but I saw this thing on Facebook, and it's in Newfoundland, and this lady she's on the municipal water supply.
Okay.
And she found really, really high levels of pesticides and herbicides, and she's having all kinds of health issues right now. And it's pretty interesting because like she's suspecting that it is the water. I don't know if there was some tests done or whatnot, but I'd be very curious to know, where is that coming from, right? And so oftentimes I feel like it's not until it's too late.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. In order to kind of find these things in our water. And so I think this is why I push so much to advocate for things with our water supply, because of how complex these issues are. And if we're not being honest with these issues, then we're going to often overlook these things. And, and I think because it's so complex, we don't want to ask those questions. We don't want to know those things. But the way I see it is, if these people are already having, these health issues, it's like, well, these things could be prevented depending on the severity of what's in that water, right? So like if that water has oils or gas or PFAS, those things are kind of complex, because like the filtration process may need to be innovated towards like, how do we get this out? And sometimes there are certain situations where the filtration system is not effective at, filtering those things out properly. So, so going forward, like these are the things that I really want to look into, right? So, do you have any questions or anything, or like anything you thought about? Because I know originally we were supposed to just make a video about how you wanted to know a little bit more about the lead lines kind of thing. And, and I think it's really great that, you're starting out in this real estate agency and you're becoming a realtor. And I think it's great to understand, your options in terms of like, what is the best practice to become, because like you have to make a living too, right? And like, it's like, how can you be as transparent as possible and also being able to solve these issues?
Being a realtor on the buyer side, if you are helping your buyer purchase a house or any property, I think it's important to go about a way that shows that you are being diligent for your buyer and making sure that you get these things looked into, especially if you do believe that there is a high likelihood that, like we're saying, there could be lead lines on the property. So making sure that you are doing that due diligence to make sure that, you get that inspection done, and just make sure that you are keeping your buyer's best interests in mind. I think that's important. I think that, it's, it comes with the profession. If you want to be a professional and if you want to be a realtor, you have to do those things for your client in order to be professional in the industry, I guess.
You guys are the communicators. Like you guys are the ones that, can put things together. And so, like the fact that you have background in plumbing and even mechanical engineering, I think that's really, really beneficial to how you're going to be able to implement those skills as well to helping that buyer, right, with their homes and stuff like that. So I think, knowing those things is definitely. So like, have you walked into any of these homes yet and just kind of like observed situations?
Homes, not so much. During my time as, I did see a lot of red flags, so to speak. Not so much when it came to lead. I did work on a lot of commercial properties. I did a lot of cast piping for floor drains in underground garages or even above ground garages. And one constant that I always seen is that the existing consistently in sanitary drainage was the piping was all done in transite, which is a mix of asbestos, cement, and other materials. I'm like, how are we still using that? Or how did we ever use that? Because for one, as we know, it's kind of common knowledge, asbestos is bad, right? You don't want to be breathing that in. And a lot of the times when you're putting in a new floor drain or any sort of drainage system, you got to tie into that asbestos cement, right? To do that, you got to cut into it. And us cutting into it would be snapping into it with snap cutters. Obviously, snapping is, it doesn't get as much dust in there as opposed to like a grinding, let's say, but still you are getting those fibers into the air and eventually into the water, let's say, and then that water does get filtered out at the end of the line, but still it's there, right? But I was just surprised to always see this asbestos piping, and I think that it's obsolete and it should be changed.
Speaking about the water and asbestos, did you know that there currently is no regulation on asbestos in water supplies? So you can have as many fibers as you want in there.
I did not know that.
Yeah. You can have as many fibers as you want in your water supply, and it doesn't matter.
Really?
Yep. So there,
is this by like a legal standpoint? It doesn't matter, or like does it like affect your health like down the line?
So that's the thing. Like, I do not want to be drinking asbestos. I do not want to be showering in asbestos. So now the data that we have on it, I mean, there's lots out there. It's really hard to say, but I know that I personally would think that it's not good for you.
Right.
But because of the fibers and everything and just drinking it in general. And there has been a lot of speculation about that. And it's funny because we don't often think that our water mains are still with asbestos, but there's actually a map that you can find where it kind of shows you how much percentage of asbestos is still around. I don't know how accurate it is, but there's actually quite a lot still.
Yeah, I would almost like say that it would be accurate just because of the amount that does still exist.
And the states actually has regulations on that in their water supply though. So it's actually, I think it's 7 million fibers or something. I can't remember exactly which one. So don't quote me on that, but they do have regulations in place for asbestos, which is actually pretty interesting. And that I'm just surprised that Canada doesn't have that.
Right. I'm sure if the states have done it, Canada will follow suit. I think we kind of like discussed this a little bit over Facebook before with the ABS, how California had actually banned ABS.
Yes.
And it seems like we seen California at one point, they want to get rid of all gas-driven vehicles and have only electric vehicles. And Canada, I think they wanted to do the same thing by like the year 2030. So if California, they got rid of ABS, I think Canada will eventually get rid of ABS as well. So let's see what happens.
People always question, they're like, why are you using ABS? I love the work, but why are you using ABS? Because a lot of people just are not used to seeing that because Canada, like we still use it all, right? I'm sure we're going to have that where the ABS piping does fall out and we start using other
XFR
materials.
maybe.
XFR. Yeah.
XFR, it's a bit more of a pain in the ass than using ABS with, the cutting or even just like having to put on primer before you glue it. But still, I always enjoyed using it. Yeah.
I don't know, that glue is so much stronger than ABS glue.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Want to get into plumbing?
What made me want to get into plumbing? You know what? I personally didn't really know. I was having a hard time as a teenager trying to figure out like what, because I was on my own since I was 17. So I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do because I was sick of working minimum wage jobs.
Right.
And I knew that I needed to do something. And so my grandmother, she was like, Megan, there's an opportunity for plumbing. And so I stayed with her for a while until I got my feet on the ground. And yeah, I've been in plumbing ever since. But what really kept me in this industry is the water quality side of things. Like I love the water quality aspect of plumbing and understanding how there's so much to do with, education around informing people about lead lines and just water quality in general. And I've been installing filtration systems and, so understanding the installer side of things, I think was really cool. And yeah, just every day you're waking up and doing something completely different. Sometimes you wake up and you're like, I don't want to do this today.
Yeah.
But, there are a lot of times where you're just like, yeah, no, I'm going to learn something today. I know it. And it's been quite a journey so far. And as for me, like, I'm kind of in the same boat as you where, I've been plumbing for almost 9 years now, but I've had a few setbacks and stuff, and I just have to write my final C of Q. So unfortunately,
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. Not quite yet, but we'll see. I'm studying for the C of Q. I got to take it the middle of March.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. I've already failed my first one.
It's okay. You're going to get it.
Yeah.
You're going to get it.
So I'm studying quite a bit. Just want to shout out to Expert Plumbing and Drains because he really helps the people that he hires, right? Like he hires a tutor. He was once a plumber and inspector, whatnot, and he is teaching them on top of the schooling that they have to go to with plumbing.
I did see that actually.
Yeah.
They have amazing content on Instagram.
Yes,
so
they do.
I'm going to give them a shout out as well. Yeah, they are killing it.
They are, and very fortunate. Like I love the company that I'm in right now, Colvin Plumbing. It's just I've never seen anything in a plumbing company that it helps the workbook kind of side of things, right? So like you sit down and they go over C of Q and hydronic stuff like that. So it's been really great experience, like joining their classes. I've been joining their classes for a couple weeks now, just to kind of prep for that C of Q.
Right.
Because I don't know much about hydronics. Like our company doesn't do much of hydronics. So when I got those questions on the C of Q, I realized that, I need to know a little bit more about it so then I can actually like be a little bit more prepped for the C of Q when it comes to those kinds of questions.
How many questions is a CFQ?
It's like 125.
125, and it's 80 to pass, I think, right?
70.
70, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm grateful to have the extra help that is needed to be able to help me pass. And so 4 years I've been with Colvin Plumbing, and before that I worked in 3 other companies, and by far Colvin Plumbing has definitely been the best I've been in because he's allowed me to, expand in areas that I'd like to, and, and to do more water quality stuff. And so, okay, real estate stuff. There's a paper that I did hand you, which was that gentleman. He was a third party, and it seems like he is very adamant about real estate and third party. I think it's the one with that house there. That one. I'm wondering if I should reach out to him because he's been in the third party, I guess, promoting real estate agents, implementing those issues. And yeah, if you want to take a look at that and eventually. And
I think it would be fantastic to have him on. It would educate both, I suppose, tradespeople, realtors, homeowners, or even buyers.
Yeah.
And I think this is definitely good stuff to know. So yeah, I'm all for that.
Yeah, for sure. There's just, I think these things definitely just need to be talked about more. And, I think it's a a great start, because there's just rising concerns, and it's only going to get, I think it's only going to get worse with all these things. And I think shining light on this topic is definitely good. So going forward with your career, are you looking to, so you're in Toronto, or you're doing a lot of Toronto area, or?
As far as real estate goes, stomping grounds, the Peel area, York, anywhere I am needed. I do live in Peel, so it does make sense to kind of, be in that area, help the people in that area. So that's what I'm going to do.
Good for you. That's awesome. Said you didn't get your license, right, for plumbing?
No, I did not. When I finished advanced, I was stuck. I'm like, don't get me wrong. Plumbing is an amazing career. Mm-hmm. It is fantastic money. The most money I have ever made, but I didn't like it. I didn't, not that I didn't like it, but I didn't have that feeling of fulfillment after a job. And I knew at that point that, something's wrong. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. When I kind of had that realization, I was like, I need to find something else. I was like, okay, what do I like to do? I like to talk to people. I like to help people. And how do I use my existing skill set with those combinations of the things that I like? Mm-hmm. And then I was like, okay, let's try out sales. Because, I do have a bit of a mechanical engineering background. I do have a plumbing background, obviously. So I found a company that was hiring a salesperson, and the salesperson would be selling pumps. And I was like, okay, I know a little bit about pumps. I used to install them, so let's give this a go. And, lo and behold, 2.5 years later, I ended up really, really enjoying it. I enjoyed it so much so that I was like, okay, I need another challenge. And I was like, okay, how can I have a sales career and kind of challenge myself? So I was like, okay, real estate, let's do that. It's one of those things that it's harder than most people think, because a lot of realtors, or a lot of would-be realtors, or even existing ones, they get their license and they think that it's going to be a breeze, just a walk in the park. They're not going to have to do anything, and that people are just going to come to them, either ask them to help sell their home or buy a home. And it's not that. It's very, very difficult. Like, okay, this sounds like a challenge, and I get to be in sales still. So let's give this a go. So that's what I'm doing, though I do know, it is going to be tough. I feel like I'm starting to hit the ground running right now, because I sought out a brokerage to kind of guide me before I even get licensed. So I got market exposure. I attended open houses with them. I've been in scripting classes with them, accountability classes. So I think that kind of gave me a little bit of an edge starting this career. Let's see what happens. And, the combination of that and the willingness to work my ass off, I'm hoping will get me places.
And it sounds like it will, for sure. Knowledge is power, and the more education you have backing you, definitely the better, and also better for, for other people.
Right, exactly. Because at the end of the day, I want to make sure I do a good job. So I want to make sure that I educate myself as much as possible, so I do bring value to the table.
Exactly. Where can you add value to the skills that you learn is super important. And that's what I try to do in my career as well, right? With the plumbing, but I'm looking to get into the more water quality side of things as well. So I want to be able to add value to that with the skills that I do know. With that being said, do you have any handles or anyone that can find you in any of these your platforms?
If anybody ever wanted to check me out, see what I'm up to, you could always find me on Instagram. My handle is Noel Cahill Realtor. That's NoelCahillRealtor. So check me out. If you like what you see, give me a follow. And I'm always trying to bring valuable content to the table. I want to be able to educate my viewers and not just do the next trend kind of thing. I want to bring value.
That's really great. And so we're going to close up here. Thank you so much for coming out, and again, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for tuning in to the Wonder Water Insights podcast. very first episode. Super exciting. If anyone wants to join me in the next episode of Wonder Water Insights to talk about water quality related things, or maybe even if you have ever experienced any kind of health issues due to water supplies, please feel free to reach out to me. Or if you are innovating in terms of technology or any kind of thing, I'd love to talk to you about that. Yeah. How do you say goodbye? So stay tuned for the next one.